Yeah, guys, let's watch this clip um, about how China is. They think it's easier than the United States, and they're proven right. I talk to Chinese people all the time, and they have a different mindset than a lot of Americans. Coming from, I'm looking at it from a perspective of global economy as nations to nations. Americans, we had a hard buy-in system before the '90s, but now it's definitely got since the Bill Clinton and since what other future presidents uh, didn't see a lot of the. They took the money. Basically, they took the money and ran. But it is now we're living the outcome of a global system. So let's hear what he got to say and hear his perspective from a Chinese perspective.
Do you want to know why Chinese people move to US? Because life is easy in US. Like to go to university here, like the top Harvard, Princeton, all these fancy universities, it's much easier to get into these universities compared to top universities in China. Because in China, the entry exam is extremely fair, but also very difficult. So it doesn't matter what family connection, how much money you have, you can't make it to those school by those, you know, other assets besides the test itself. Where in US, you basically just need money and connection. Then you can make it anywhere.
I'm gonna stop right there and make a point real quick. See what he said? He could have played anywhere in the world, anywhere in the world. He could have played in the United Kingdom, England. Could have played anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world. But he compared China to the United States. See, America was the top, is the beacon, it's the lighthouse on global economy, and so the Chinese know what really the perspective. So before the '90s, everybody was championing their schools to get rated up with the U.S., England, everywhere. It was the U.S. standard. So in academia and corporate America and international affairs, every, everything was America was the preeminent figurehead of the world global system in academia, every sphere. We know that. So the schools in China was very high ranking. They had to go above because they was classified as international school compared to us. You know, and now they're not compared. Our rankings have went down so low. We're still the global eminent power, but we're reduced in so many aspects that the Chinese come here and they from their country they came here like, wait a minute, it's easy here. These Americans don't want to work. They don't want to put in the. We was doing this in elementary school. We was going to school from 6 in the morning to 4:30. We would have to be there early. We had to yes ma'am, no ma'am. We had to stare. We had to we had to know everything about China, like Americans had to know back in the '80s. Now it's different. And so they come to America and they're like, man, wow, it's just easy. And that's how he just routed off his tongue, coming from China to America. He was stating that, hey, this is simple here. It's not comparative to China because he was seeing it from an international perspective over in China. Now he's in the United States. He's like, oh man, y'all don't know what he sees. This is lush land to him. But let's continue to watch what he says. What do you think? Leave a comment down below.
And then the jobs. In China, jobs, really good jobs, are difficult to find. And you work super hard for years and years, right? There's like a working culture that's like, 9 to 9, 6 days a week. Where in US, like, yeah, there are a few companies that does that, but like, you're not working that much hour.
There's a demand for skilled tax preparers.
He's comparing for the most part. It's different from America. Now he's talking about the work world, and the work world is different over there. And he's telling you straight up. He's telling you straight up that the Chinese work world is totally different from America's. 9 to 9, 6 days a week. You couldn't get the average American to work there. There's a few corporations that work that way, but when they're paying you 125, 100, $200,000, $150,000 a year, and that's up in New York with major corporations at the higher level. You might be a vice VP, and they need you there because you're replacing the owner where he get his breaks. You know, so he's paying you for that break. You know, and you're a high level influence because he don't have to worry about certain things that pop off in major emergency situations. You can handle it, and if it's too much, you shoot him an email or call him, let him know why he's on his vacation, which is all the time for the most part, because that's why he got you in there. But you're working around the clock to keep his corporation and looking for opportunities to improve his corporation. Like he said, some American companies doing that, but for the most part, we talking about a whole nation that's ran like that. You could go on the streets of Chinese. They open up early in the morning and don't close down till 7 to 8 o'clock at night. They're doing 12-hour shifts and small businesses. So their whole economy, he says, a work economy. Over here, we got that same process, but it has changed over the last 30 years, 40 years. It's like people do not want to work. People don't want to start business. You know, I start my business. I made 20 some dollars there. I made $300 if I worked that many hours. If I worked that many hours, I would have made this amount of money. Let's say you make $20 an hour and you work 10 hours a day. You just made $200, and and here you work at let's say you sort of barbershop or something. You might make $150 because it's a slow day. You like, I've been here 10 hours. I only made 150. I could work McDonald's and make 200 there if I work the same amount of hours. So people don't look at that the same way. But you're producing your own business. You're growing. This American people they want to get paid for what they value. Other places they want to get paid, but they happy to have a job because the competitive edge is so different than versus the United States. And so they have a different drive, and they're competing against international companies and countries. So they definitely competing at a different level, and they know this, and so they operate different. And so he is exposing us from a Chinese perspective, coming to the United States and working in our country, and seeing how it's totally different, and seeing how it's easy, and how that's why Chinese want to come to the United States because they know they can make it just in their work ethic and their drive is going to be extensive versus the average American citizen. Because we're like I said, we're the the, the lighthouse. We're the focus of the world. But at that point, a lot of Americans got comfortable and thought it was just that's the way it is, and it's not. You got to still work hard and you know and build yourself up. But most Americans don't want to do that. We think, oh, we already have it. No, the country has that recognition, not you as an individual. You still got to produce. But he's touched on this really well. Let's continue to find out what he got to talk about.
Week 9 to 9, 6 days a week, and that's a good job. Like that's a job where I'm assuming the same, similar, but you're in corporate, but you're just working harder or whatever. But this just tells me that our people here tells me a couple different things. The first thing that it tells me is that the people here are super spoiled. We have
Super
become so
spoiled.
accustomed to advocating for more money for less work. We think that we are more valuable than we are. We don't understand the global game that comes along with what it is that we do for a living. And we also think that companies, because of what they generate, are supposed to take care of us for the rest of our lives, which basically lends us to a more lazy culture. And actually, you know what's so funny about that is that if you actually study Asian culture and the Chinese in particular, which I have for a lifetime, even to the point to where I've studied the language, I've studied the cultural norms, everything. You know, I travel a lot and I speak Mandarin and things like that. Starting to lose it a little bit because I don't use it as much because I can't actually, as I get older, I start to value American culture more than because it's where I'm from, right? And it's what I'm going to champion the most. But the point that I'm making is just that when you think about how they move and how they operate, right? They're starting to become more Americanized, which makes them even weaker than what they were when we started to build up the economy by subsidizing our jobs and sending them over there and bringing them up to the technology standards to where they are now. And so before we continue on with this video, let me explain to you guys exactly how we've subsidized their economy and how we made them great and why it's important for us to make us great again. During the 90s, while Bill Clinton was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and stuff like that, and then also during both Bush administrations, tenure, which I think that the second Bush is the worst president of all time, but Bill Clinton certainly contributed to it. They basically created deals to where companies sold out their future, and it seemed like it was a whole lot of money that was flowing in the United States of America. But really, we mortgaged our future so that people can move into finance and move away from manufacturing. So you're seeing all of our jobs and our manufacturing move overseas for higher profits in corporate America, but that money was not passed down to the worker. Fast forward, what happens is now we're reliant on other countries for our manufacturing, and it even made it so bad to where now it's a national security crisis. So when we get our steel from over there and all of our steel mills shut down, if there was ever any kind of problem with war or something, we don't have the infrastructure to really be able to sustain or support ourselves, and we have become completely independent on other countries, which is why you see people over here today complaining about tariffs, right? If costs go up because we want to move more manufacturing back to the United States of America, no, we just want cheaper and cheaper products. Well, that's because people don't understand the world economy. And I'm giving you a little small crash course, right? But I'm giving it to you for a reason, because I want you to understand that as we continue to go down this path, right, it's so much harder to make it elsewhere. And the only reason we think that it's easier is because we take our American dollars and then we move over to their countries to gentrify what they have going on. They don't even really want us over there unless we come over there and we already bring resources and we're sustainable, right? And we already have something to offer. And then we allow for everybody else to come into this country and they don't offer anything, but they're able to make way more money, use our education system to continue to push themselves and not even compete in their own countries. So this just tells me that we're soft. We're soft as tissue. We've turned our universities into liberal indoctrination camps. And instead of us learning how to think, we're taught what to think. Let me let him cook a little bit more and we're going to go from there.
And you get a lot more salary and stocks, essentially, as an award. Versus China, you get a good salary relative to your income, or sorry, your cost of living, but it's not as much as U.S. So people move to U.S. because life is easier, and most Americans don't realize that because you have it so easy for decades and decades. For certain people, not everyone, but that's why. And this is why I actually think like it's so important to do business with China, and because basically like you have a country that is like brewing and super competitive in everything. Whatever comes out of there, you take it to the rest of the world. It would just be like a superstar, you know. So whatever imports you want to bring in, whatever services you want to bring from China to the rest of the world, like you just become a superstar. I can just give you my personal experience. I moved to Canada when I was like 10. I just turned 10. So like grade 5. I was probably the dumbest kid in class in China. Like I was like barely passing. I was like not a good student. When I moved to Canada, I was the smartest kid. Like I was a couple grades ahead. I was doing like math that was so complicated. Everyone was like, oh my God. The teachers asked me to like go to the front of class and like show what I did. I was like, oh, okay, all right. And it's funny, after I sat down, there was a Russian kid, really nice guy, blonde hair, blue eye. He's like, I knew this too. I just pretend I don't know them, so I'll fit in. I was like, oh.
Jesus Christ. So this just basically tells you that their culture champions hard work and grind and hustle, and they move over here because it's easier, and we've basically become soft as tissue. We don't have any standards. We just push our children through. There's no child left behind. Hey, Starbucks workers can advocate for $25 an hour. Minimum wage workers and McDonald's, they should be making $25 an hour. It doesn't matter if your kid can read. I've been doing videos of teachers that's basically saying that their children can't even read because the parents don't give a F anymore. And we sitting here complaining, talking about, oh, it's because we work too hard and stuff. It's not. It's because our cultural norms is trash and we don't work hard enough. and everything is coddled and pedestalized, and it doesn't really, we're going to subsidize your lifestyle no matter what. So we'll give you food stamps and Section 8, and we'll incentivize you to be able to leave your family. But there's consequences in other places when you do things like that. You just don't get to pass. You have to be, because a lot of people are saying, oh, I want to go to China. You couldn't compete over there. You couldn't compete over there. You would make less money, and you would have more requirements. And even in a socialist situation or a communist situation, you would get your ass kicked. You would absolutely get wiped off the front of the map. Let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. T. Chenley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to holler at you guys later. Peace.
Yeah, guys. I really like this one here. I had to comment on this one here. Uh, the Chinese guy was totally hitting some positive points about American culture, American society, and international relations between nation and national nations. And he talked about going to Canada when he was 5, when he was 10 years old in 5th grade. And he was saying the truth. The Russian guy told him the same thing. He's just fitting in, and he just learned different. He was learning cultural norms from different international cultural norms, from different countries. And the guy said, "Oh, okay, I got that now." And like even in the United States, there are certain places where kids will learn grades ahead because of the teachers that teach them. You go to private school, public school, there's a difference. And inside the United States, he didn't touch on that too much, but I'm gonna touch on that because when I came out west, I was ahead of these kids out west because of the way they learned. But then I went to private schools, certain private schools, and they were teaching kids like we was teaching down south. And I was like, oh, okay, it's similar, but it was private. So depending on the institution, depending on the education, but the regular public institution, I agree with. Guys just spilling everything everywhere. Yeah, I'm in Barnes and Nobles doing this video right quick. But he spoke on 2 points, right? We had since the '80s we have changed. The American system has changed and has got complacent on the international, on a global scale. Our production, and I had to agree, but I got to slightly disagree with one thing. Anton was saying, not just necessarily disagree, but expand on. We actually, when we as becoming the first nation of the world, we know we were position ourselves that way. Um, we offshored our steel industry, our different production, manufacturing, because we didn't have to have here, we didn't have to meet OSHA standards, where other countries and the corporations said, oh, okay, we'll have the U.S. supporting us, and plus we can go over to other countries as long as we get U.S. contracts. And so it was easy for them to set up major manufacturing and then add other manufacturers they might have had under their portfolio to be able to encapsulate their larger portion of their corporations, companies under their portfolio. So that was happening all over the country in every sphere of employment, in the economic economy. Uh, what I mean by manufacturing, the automotive, uh, wood, all raw materials. We was look at what China was doing. Look what Japan was doing to us. They was buying our products, our forestry, and then turn around, take it over to Japan, and import it right back to us. They wouldn't even put it. They was buying our products, our raw products, and shipping it over to China and Japan, and housing it on the ports. And then soon we need it, they'll turn around and sell it right back to us at a different cost factor because we wasn't producing the manufacture we used to do it, the forestry that we used to have here in the United States. That was a major shift. What it allowed the top level of our society to thrive. That's why the lower class and the working class, they understand there was no difference. They understand one thing: we were losing jobs, losing manufacturing jobs, all in Philadelphia and Virginia, all over the country. A lot of the poor sectors of American society, but it also helped out a little bit. Uh, and now that we see this, we're trying to bring it back to the U.S. And what we used to do back in the '80s when the international students came to America, You couldn't stay in the United States. You had to return back to your country. You actually came to go to institutions here and get your education, then return back to your company. And it was two phases. You had young international students that came over and got their bachelor's, and they was looked upon as a higher level education coming from the United States back to their country. So a lot of Chinese, a lot of Japanese, a lot of people from different countries, Koreans, they would come to the United States and get their education and then go back to their country, say, and so they would get better corporate jobs because they got international education. Now they're not. That's one group. Another group was like corporations in their country would send them to the United States on visas to study in the United States, and they would go back and get a corporate job, a higher job in their countries. That was two groups, major groups, international groups that came to America. Now that in the early 2000s, that definitely changed. That was about a decade was going on for like from like 85 to it was always going on, but it really was uh, at a large scale from 1985 to like 2000. Then it started tripping out. People started coming here and staying here and getting jobs in America because it was so easy. Because you got to think about it, there was 15 years of people coming to America and say, hold on, I can get a job in America and stay here. And so you had this influx of international people that was staying in the United States since 2000 that people don't talk about. And they were starting their lives here when they used their visas to get here in their education. They would get here, get their degrees, and they would get a job at Microsoft or Boeing or whatever tech company, and then they would stay. And the company would continue to get them a visa, working visa. So they would stay in the U.S. and work in the United States and buy property because they got a big salary now. But what's happened with the company, American companies, or they'll pay American let's say a American citizen $150,000, but they'll tell international because they're international. Remember, they're still international, so they'll pay them like 75,000 or $80,000 or $90,000, and so they weren't getting the same amount, but they were getting way more than they would ever get in China because of the way the country set up. Because it's very competitive because they dealing with the international market. Japan is very competitive. So that was happening in the U.S. They would stay and that started shifting our dynamics. So our upper elite was not getting a lot of jobs that previous in the 80s and the 90s they was deemed that they would get. They're no longer getting anymore. So that became a epidemic in the workforce and the tech areas and business, finance, different sectors, real estate. That was happening everywhere, and you had to compete. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it was some wrong because then companies was doing it for financial gain versus uh, 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 a U.S. company. And so this was things was articles written about this in schools, colleges, and people were talking about it, but nothing was done about it. Now there's things being done now, but nevertheless, this guy from China is really telling the truth. America has got lazy. It definitely has got lazy, and he says that's why Chinese people move to the U.S. because it's much easier. Because China is very competitive, very competitive. I met a lot of Chinese in community college, very smart, intelligent people, very capable. Very, I'm not taking them from no. I can't. I'm American. I can't take them from another person. If I see it, they earned it. They earned their right. They worked hard. They're very educated. They're very smart. I can't take it from the Chinese people because they're very competitive at large in their country. Do they have poor people? Of course they have poor people. But the country itself, like Japan, Korea, um, these countries are very internationally known. Why? Because they're competitors on a global scale. You got to recognize that. And if you talk to real Chinese people and real Japanese and Korean, they're they're smart people. Not saying all. We know every country have your different classifications of people, but the ones that we talk to, most of the ones come here are the ones coming from corporations, or they prepared to come here for the most part. Not all, but most of them. So you're dealing with different demographic that come here. So they see us different. And we have the whole topic of this conversation is we have scaled down. We had to recognize it first and be honest with ourselves as U.S. citizens and see, and we got to get back up on challenge on a global scale. The challenge our position that we're being recognized on the world because we're actually losing a lot of uh, statistical points from international corporations, companies, nations that see us differently now, and they compete. But we now that we're one global system, and we as Americans have established this system in the world. Now we have to compete at a different level, and I don't think a lot of Americans want to compete at that level. And so, but you are forced to now, because now the companies are now become global. Now everybody owns companies, so they're not just taking anybody. So you're forced to compete on a global scale. So what do you think, guys? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your comments. You agree? You don't agree? Tell me what you think. I'd like to know. Did you think about this international Chinese man? What he said in this clip? What do you think about Anton? I would like to know. This is my reaction to this video. I think Anton was spot on. You know, Anton is a black man from Detroit, a black American from Detroit. He studied Mandarin Chinese. You don't even know that, but you know, don't look at the person on the outside. Look at the person on the inside. Get to know them and get to know who they are. I didn't know he spoke Mandarin. I just learned something new about Anton Daniels. So yeah, man, I speak Spanish. I studied Spanish for 6 years. Went to Central America, studied abroad. I was going to Spain. I'm not studying more because I'm a U.S. citizen and this is my country, and I speak mostly English now. If I was in other countries, it'd take me a couple weeks to a month, and I'll be speaking fluent Spanish again. But yeah, because I have that. It's like riding a bike. Once you rode a bike and you learn it for so many years, you develop that skill set. You never forget it. So, but being American, how many people are speaking Spanish every day? I don't. I do not. We speak English. We speak the the Queen's language. It's English. So yeah, it's great. This is a great one. I'm sorry it took a long time on this, but I really enjoyed this one. What do you guys think? What do you think about international uh, econ- economics, international nation to nation, global systems? This was a great conversation. I'd like to hear what you got to think. This is a great reaction video. I'm excited about this. I'm excited to sponsor here in the commentaries. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Without further ado, let's end this. Stop, stop.